Welcome back to Cheddar Business. The Securities and Exchange Commission investigating tobacco giant Altria over its 35% stake in the leading e-cigarette maker Juul. The SEC looking into whether Altria told shareholders the risk of investing $12 billion into Juul. And joining us now is Vinoo. He's a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Vinoo, it's good to have you with us.
Good morning.
At this point, how can the SEC find out if Altria knew of these risks and did not properly communicate them to shareholders?
What they do is they serve discovery demands. There's an investigation that's going on. I mean, not official discovery like you have in court, but it's often in these companies' interest to cooperate. And what they do is they provide information voluntarily. So when they do that, they will build up their investigation. It's kind of similar to what they've done with Rio Tinto, and basically which involved the undervaluing of stocks in a Mozambique company, and they ultimately led to the filing of a civil complaint. I think that's where this could be headed, which could end up mean the end of Juul in America, potentially.
Well, take us into how that could be. How could this be the end of Juul in America?
Well, if it turns out that, or it could be the really hurt Altria, right? Altria's name means high, right? And so clearly they're doing something here that involved the promotion and marketing, and now they step back, right? So they're not helping with that. They're going to help with regulations. But once you have this information, ultimately what they can do is what they did, like with Rio Tinto, charge its people with fraud, if that's what it turns out that it was. Now,
charge Altria or charge Juul? Charge
Altria, Juul, or Casey Crossway, the CEO
of Juul, who came from Altria,
right,
could have. Is there any chance that anyone could have seen this coming? That's the question, right? You sort of had this perfect storm of concerns about the health risks that were exacerbated by people getting sick around the country and people dying around the country because of vaping, and wasn't necessarily because they were vaping Juul.
Right.
Increased scrutiny around that. You had state attorneys general and then the federal government also get involved over concerns. But all of that happened after Altria purchased that 35% stake in Juul. So nobody can see the future here. So what expectations should shareholders have that they're adequately warned about risks when a company makes an acquisition like this?
Well, it's going to depend on their internal documents and communications, right? So this is what the SEC is investigating. SEC has broad authority to investigate these, basically see if there's any sort of misleading if in any way Altria misled its investors. So when they produce this thing, it can take years. The Rio Tinto thing took about 4 years before it ended up in a civil complaint.
So they're going to be looking at messages, emails, obviously SEC filings to make this determination.
Right, it's all of that. And if it turns out that they were forewarned that this could have happened, basically, Philip Morris, Altria, was trying to get ahead of this and get on top of this, and Juul was obviously incredibly popular. Juul now has had an $8 billion write-down. So ultimately, this is going to come back, and we'll see, right? I'm a criminal defense attorney, right? I don't like to speculate and presume people are guilty or liable of anything until the facts come out. But obviously, this is a big, big company, Altria and Juul. I mean, this is everywhere, like you said, with the scrutiny. So the SEC is going to be very thorough in its investigation.
What does a negative outcome look like? How grand could that be?
A negative outcome would be the company charged civilly with fraud. I mean, an extreme outcome, criminal charges.
Right. What sort of dollar amount would that entail?
Could be billions of dollars in fines. I mean, ultimately, it could lead to the end of a permanent ban for the leaders of these companies in holding directorships in publicly traded companies.
But there is obviously demand for this type of product. Maybe it's not what it once was, especially in the US. I know anecdotally, I'm not seeing people walk around puffing on Juul devices to the same extent that I did, say, a year ago. But if Juul were to cease to exist, don't you think competitors would take that position, and then those competitors would face some sort of similar scrutiny?
Well, I think you have the problem that Juul has had, and Juul is engaged in a lot of litigation, is that there were counterfeiters. As they've said, the knockoffs are being knocked off. So absolutely right. So if Juul goes down, then other companies will come in and fill the void. A lot of these companies are counterfeit companies out of China. And so there's going to be a demand. The question is whether it's going to be legal or there's going to be black market. And if you lead to an ultimate ban, as the federal government was thinking, I think that'll create a higher black market.
Legally, what would Altria argue that protects it against any repercussions that Juul would be faced with?
That it could not have foreseen this, right? That's what they will say. So if there are no emails to show that all this scrutiny that came about was not foreseeable, then they will be ultimately, there may not be a complaint filed against them.
All right, Vinoo Varghese, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Vinoo.